In the previous episode, you heard Alexander exert his throat chakra, bringing you all the numerological descriptions behind the 52 card deck utilized by the Destiny card system. But now we will explain what a Destiny card report is and how useful it can be to your day-to-day life adventures. Alexander and I also will share some of our life stories about past events and how the Destiny card reports enlightened us of the energies surrounding those experiences. So let's drop the Destiny card knowledge and journey.
Wise.
With Aaron and Alexander.
Uncovering our authentic self.
Through self-awareness, conscious communication, and emotional responsibility. Welcome back to our Destiny card system special. This is a continuation of the previous episode in which Alexander talked for a very long time on all the different numerological properties of the Destiny card system and birth cards and planetary ruling cards. So in this episode, we wanted to touch upon what you actually get when you purchase a Destiny card report from Alexander. So there actually are several different types of reports you could possibly purchase. One is the yearly report, which starts from your birth date until your following birth date. So it's not a January to December type of thing. It's actually from your birth date to your next birth date. And there's also a relationship type of report, which can also be your personal romantic relationships or even a professional relationship. So I think what we want to do is dive into the yearly report, since that is the most popular type of report and the one that I utilize in my life and has helped me out a lot. So let's dive into that, Alexander. So the yearly report starts on your birthday and is actually broken down into 7 52-day cycles.
Yeah, so, the way I'd like to introduce this is just kind of having a picture of when you're born, there being an energetic stamp that you're given. And depending on the positioning of the planets, as they shift, they're going to affect you differently than somebody that was born the day before or 6 months earlier. And so this is where we get into more of the individualization of how each individual's experience of each day is literally different due to these influences. And so this has really helped me to deepen my level of compassion for people, to realize that different people have different struggles and obstacles that they have to overcome that I'm not weighted with. And so that constantly helps me to stay in compassion. And then I have struggles that I have to deal with that others very rarely have to deal with at all. So this is the give and take that we have, and why approaching people with compassion is such a good practice to help us to understand that we are all very different and having different experiences simultaneously. So in these yearly reports, you get actually what's called a birth spread and a planetary ruling spread. For some people in the beginning, it can be confusing because it's kind of like you're reading two different reports. But this is where you have to be honest with yourself, and why I also like this system, that it's limited to what somebody can put into your head, because you have to kind of make the decisions of where you're really at. And most people are at some kind of bridge between the planetary ruling card and the birth card. And if that happens to be the same for all Leos or people born at the beginning of August to end of July, their planetary ruling and birth cards are the same. So that just means you have a double whammy of that. With me, once again, mine was the 10 of clubs, the master of knowledge, and then the loving mother, the queen of hearts. And so I worked for 10 years to build my intellect, my knowledge, my understanding of many different systems and philosophies. And then I saw that my birth card was truly to learn to come from my heart completely. And so then I stopped studying and didn't read any books for over 10 years and worked on my compassion and being of service. And that was actually when I entered into 11 years ago, stepping out to be of service for people. So after spending 10 years learning intellectually, then I spent over 10 years learning just interactively, so to say. And that was my journey. But they were two very, very different journeys that now, with over 22 years experience, now I utilize both sides of those to just help give a direction for people that are looking for their path, not a path. And that's why JUST is the acronym. Once again, Journeys Unite, Seeking Transformation. And so this is the JUST philosophy, and it is a frequency-based view of life and how we all operate through these frequencies. So with a yearly report on both of these spreads, you get a long range card, which is basically your influence throughout the whole year. And so you can kind of look at that as like a stepbrother or sister that you're babysitting for a year. It's just going to be with you steadily throughout the whole year. And then the next you have a Pluto card, which is like your work. That could be a spiritual work. It could be a physical work. It could be a possible job change. It could be a relationship change. But it's kind of like your challenge for the year. And then you get a result card, which is actually kind of what you get if you do this work. And so I meet many people and they say, I don't even know where to start. And this is a very good tool to see where to start right now in the present. And that does change yearly. So after the result card, you have an environment card, which is basically the tools that you brought into this year to help you throughout the year. And then a displacement card, which is connected to what you need to give away throughout that year. Then the bottom part of the report is the 7 planetary influences that start with Mercury. So understand everybody's not going through the same type of influence simultaneously, because somebody that's born 3 months earlier isn't going to be going through Mercury. They're going to be going through their Venus period. So all of these periods start on your birthday, and everyone starts in the same order and starts with Mercury, which is the planet of communication. And then 52 days later, it shifts into Venus. And Venus is what rules our affections or our relationships. Then it shifts into 52 days later into Mars. And Mars is about attraction and competition. So many times people that's under our Mars influence, we're extremely attracted to them, but they can anger us very quickly. So that kind of comes hand in hand. And then in the Jupiter period follows, and this is normally the blessing period. Jupiter is normally the financial giver, but the giver in general. And this is halfway through our year. And it kind of bounces from loosely bouncing from like a masculine feminine shift every 52 days, or a giving 52-day period, then a receiving, because it starts off kind of masculine, giving with the Mercury, and then receiving with the Venus, and then the masculine with Mars again, and competition, attraction, and then the feminine with the Jupiter and the receiving. And so that's a good way to watch how these cycles actually balance out our flow of life when we allow it, and we live within these parameters. So after the 52-day cycle of Jupiter, you move into Saturn. And Saturn is the challenge. I call it, it's the time like we're walking through peanut butter, because it's the teacher, it's the burden. Anything that we feel burdened by gets amplified during our Saturn period. And anybody's card that falls under these periods, that gives you an end to understanding the role that they're playing for you. So somebody's card, say your wife's card, falls under your Saturn period, then basically that means that during that 52 days, or throughout the whole year actually, but especially during that 52 days, she's going to seem like she is trying to be your father or something, trying to correct you. And that's what Saturn is about, so they can be a burden. So that's kind of how that can play out. And then 52 days after Saturn, you shift into Uranus. And Uranus is all about unpredictability. And so if somebody falls under your Uranus influence, then it means it's going to be extra hard for you to trust them. And it doesn't mean that they're doing anything that they shouldn't be doing. It just seems like they will always let you down by being late. There will always be traffic that holds them up. So once again, I utilize this, that when I recognize that in somebody, I just take that with a grain of salt. And every time we set a specific time, I just go ahead and accept that more than likely they're going to be late. And see how this starts to help us to move with the energies, similar to how a tree bends with the weather, but it stays rooted. And that's the way I kind of want this to be envisioned, is it's giving you information so that you're more flexible and more able to bend while still staying firm, in your intentions and your direction. And then the last 52-day period is the Neptune period, and that's seeing things through rose-colored glasses. So during this period, we really subconsciously see things the way we want to see them. And so this is one of the worst times to make any major decisions in your life. And many times people will end relationships or buy a new car or a new house or get married, make some kind of huge decision in this last 52-day period, and then many times regret it as soon as their birthday comes and Mercury's logic comes back in. So I just try to warn people to, be very conscious of any decisions that you make during your Neptune period, because you're not typically seeing things clearly. And I think this is just beautiful, the way that this shows that life is truly a dance. And that, when we don't carry all of these preferences, life can be much more of a nice companion rather than something that we're trying to direct all the time. So having an understanding of how your personality works, what your soul really or spirit wants to develop into, and then having a roadmap for that, so to say, this helps you to understand all of your relationships on all the different levels, as Aaron pointed out earlier, whether it be professional or other type of business or personal or social. And this covers a wide range of information. So this, coupled with the human design, it actually gives you a roadmap to start, where to start working on yourself, how to, and it gives the answers, many of the answers combined with the Just philosophy. With these two tools is an all-encompassing product that will help people understand themselves more deeply, carry compassion for others, how to optimally communicate with others around them, and understand that I want to mention here that I really feel like in relationships, and I'm going to break down my wellness breakdown here again, that a physical or mental dis-ease normally stems from a weakness in the energetic field or the aura. And that aura or energetic field gets weakened from suppression or over-exaggeration of emotions. And then these emotions get stimulated from failure to communicate in our relationships. So in my private practice, no matter what issue, what pain someone is holding, I come from a concept that has a communication beginning, a communication breakdown beginning. And that's what I work with my clients to work to find where that communication blockage was created, and it's been wreaking havoc ever since. So if you release the origination or the beginning trauma, if you will, then it stops it from being a negative affecting process in your life. And this is the way that I suggest people to start breaking their bad habits. And these tools are wonderful tools, but they are just that. We have to do the work ourselves. And, that remember that change and growth happens through friction. So this is why I suggest lean into the friction in life, but make that friction internal rather than external. and we can grow together and experience amazing things.
So, from my experience with starting to get into the system, learning it, and having my yearly report, I wanted to throw out a few tips for everybody. I think the best way to start getting into it is to actually, if you have the report, become a Monday morning quarterback. So, for instance, if you are in the middle of your birth year and you look back at what the report said for the first half of your year, think about what were the major events that happened in your life, and then look back at the report to see what kind of energies were surrounding you in what periods of your life. And you can kind of get a feel for what the reports touch on and how the energies that they report will be invoked in your life. And then also pay attention to like your yearly card, like Alexander was explaining, which is your overall theme for your birth year, and your Pluto card, which is your work for that year, and the result card. And these are all things that I noticed that I could definitely put an occurrence or something in my life to those specific cards. So, for instance, a few examples. So the year Alexander and I decided to start a podcast, I had the writer's card, and I can't remember which card that is. It might be like an 8 of...
No, it's actually the 3 of clubs.
3 of clubs, okay. So I had the writer's card, so I knew I was going to be doing something in clubs, whether it be a hobby or just getting interested in something. And it was just funny how it all played out that way. And this year, everybody knows, I've kind of talked about in previous episodes about getting into Facebook groups and kind of making friends, but interacting with all those personality types. I actually, in my Venus period of my 52-day cycle, I had a person's card of somebody I met within these groups, and we became like mods together and had to kind of direct the group and all the group energies. And so her birth card was in my spread in the Venus period. And so in the report, it gives like a description of what that type of card energy in that 52-day cycle means. And it talked about how I would have a disappointment with some type of friend or group of friends. And that's exactly what ended up happening. Specifically with this certain person, we had a little bit of, I don't know if it was like Mars energy, but it kind of felt like that.
Yeah, competitive or frictional.
Yeah, and it was just funny how her card represented that, so I could think that's maybe a coincidence, but it was in my Venus, and it talked about friends, and Venus is like relationships and things like that.
Yeah, and this is where people, you can see them playing roles and understand that in this role play that you have the right to forgive them for playing that role and just get the lesson that they're there teaching. And so this is part of the work and the basis of this philosophy in how to utilize our relationships to help ourselves grow.
And to put the cherry on top of the sundae, her card was also my Pluto card, which was my lesson in for this year. And my result card was your card, the Queen of Hearts. So I interpreted that as if I overcame and I kind of utilized this philosophy to manage the situation, the falling out with that specific person properly, with the emotional responsibility, then the result would be like the loving mother or the energy of, I guess I would say...
Well, I would use the term compassion. That's the ability to not take it offensively, work through what that is, see what it was connected to from the past, release that. And so that brings in the loving mother or the Queen of Hearts. My birth card is that compassionate one, the non-judgmental one. And so that's what I do in my private practice is people come and sit in front of me, and many times they don't know what's wrong with them. But as we get to talking and uncovering things, me looking at their chart and their human design, we're able to dissect it very quickly and help them to get clear. And that's what you were willing to see them from a different angle because you were utilizing them to work on something in yourself rather than them attacking you. And that to me is the epitome of the Queen of Hearts card, or that loving mother or compassionate one.
Yeah, I mean, I guess internally it felt like, because I feel like I managed that situation to the best of my ability and to the best that I knew how to within this philosophy, I felt like I leveled up in a way. Like, it was a big milestone in my life
Yeah.
to have sort of like my first big conflict in my life that I knew about, and was conscious throughout the whole thing and able to manage that properly.
So yeah, responding as we discussed rather than reacting, and for certain types, be it the human design and cards, the reaction sometimes is just to leave, or just to cut the connection and never explain, never ask. And so this, once again, this can help us to understand why people do, what they do. And that's why the name of our podcast is Wise. We're just suggesting to, every time you have an external why, to turn that internal. Instead of saying, why does Jane treat me so bad? When Jane treats you bad, to look at it and say, where do I treat myself similar to this? And then the proof has been that if you resolve that and stop treating yourself that way, then the external messenger stops coming to give you that message. And this gets into the philosophy and the energetic side of things, and how I expand on these systems and utilize them within this whole complete philosophy, which is hopefully a roadmap, and to answer all the questions that most people would have about almost any situation that comes up in life.
Yeah, so the report definitely helped me realize and be conscious that people are playing roles in my life, because I was going back and looking at it during that time. And I know in myself in the past, I have read the report and then forgot about it for like 3 or 4 months. I come back to it and be like, oh, I could have been warned about these types of energies and handle it better. So I would say another tip would be possibly putting it on your fridge. And there's even a little mantra in there for each card,
or an affirmation.
Yeah, and so it's something to reaffirm yourself of the energies that are coming in. And so I think reading that, maybe definitely on a daily basis, would be very optimal for helping you realize the energies that are coming into your life, and utilizing the report to the best of its ability.
Yeah, and I think that, this helps with, many people ask about intention, and we've covered it in some previous podcasts, but what I like to suggest as a type of sin is anything that knocks you off your path, or anything that takes you away from your intention. So, not to see that word so harshly as something as bad as killing, and not taking it into that extreme, but more subtle. And in this language, in this world, that's what we're doing, is we're making everything more subtle. We're seeing everything at a subtle level, so that it doesn't have to build the energy to be in the physical and to be something much more devastating. So the earlier you catch the vibration and change it, the less ripples it's going to send out. So yes, accepting that people do play roles in our lives, and this helped me to understand why Jesus and Buddha and many different teachers, Gandhi, Yogananda, many different types of teachers, taught this compassion and taught the turn the other cheek. And that's been hard for some people to accept. But this is the proof that on an energetic level, when you're able to do that, it shifts what you are receiving in the physical world. And once again, this is connected to physics, and the way that energy works on a physical energetic platform is very similar of how it works on this internal energetic platform as well. So the vibration that we carry is, so important. And so rather than just affecting change on yourself or the world, part of the practice should be on holding a vibration. And when you get in to experiencing something that's like happy or joyful, to use that intention to really pay attention to, like for me, it's in my abdomen, but everybody carries it somewhere, this warm feeling that maybe they had as a kid. And that's what ignites in me when I'm around something joyful or happy or contentment. And so I pay close attention to that feeling. And anytime I get it, I just want to hold on to it for as long as I can and pay attention to anything that's going to take that away from me. So this changing your vibration is all about perseverance and being able to stand in the storm. And so I tell beautiful light workers or people that are here to be of service, they're normally very, very sensitive. And I think it's time to stand in your strength, and maybe this can help people to connect on that level to weather the storm, because the people that are out there doing so-called negative things, they get charged by the storm. And it's time for people of the light or people that are here to be of service, however you want to put the verbiage to it, to realize that we have to stand in some of that friction to show the strength. This is why many times not saying anything or not doing anything is much more powerful than actually doing or saying, but just to stay and let your presence be known, because darkness flees light. So it's not that you have to go throwing that light everywhere. You just have to hold that light wherever you are. And that's not a forceful act. That's a content act. That's a meditative act. That's an act of neutrality. And this is what all this philosophy connects to. So both in this episode and the episodes previous, this is the language that we get into. We enjoy sharing this with the world. And this is what we're hopefully providing, is a language to base communication off of and to clear up a lot of this misunderstanding that goes on in talking.
And I did want to bring up one last example and tell people that if they do get a report and they see the Ace of Spades, not to be too worried. It is sometimes referenced as the death card, or it could be likened to the death card in tarot, which is basically about new beginnings, right?
Yeah, or endings. Endings and new beginnings, but transition is really the key word that I like to use. And so, yes, some of the language on it could say you may experience a death of a loved one, or a part of you may be ready to move on. And so I've actually experienced actual people dying in those times, when those cards come up that were close to me. And I've also seen it as just times for me to let part of something of me to let go of. And, the majority of the time it is around that. So the whole point of either one of these systems is if you are generating anything negative, any negative emotion from it, then it has been misinterpreted. And so that's a good default, that if you read something and it evokes fear, then you are misinterpreting it right away. Because we have to understand that, even death is a transition that everybody's going to go through on this plane. And we really need to stop judging that as negative. And I say this after losing my mother, my father, a best friend that was like a brother, my wife 11 years ago, a nephew just a few months ago at 35 years old. So I say all of that, having to prove that you can learn to embrace that transition. And so yes, with any of the verbiage from any of this podcast or any of the systems, understand that if you have a negative reaction, then something's been misconstrued. And we're always welcome to clear that up, given the opportunity.
So I actually have the death card in my planetary ruling yearly. And whenever I have the death card or the Ace of Spades, I'm always like, oh, what's the lesson? What's it going to be? What's it going to be? And I'm always like trying to figure it out. Is it this? Is it this? And I'm like kind of waiting for something big to happen in my life. And sometimes it goes through and the lesson isn't really clear. I mean, I feel like I'm always changing and transforming. But this year, if people know me, I think what it represented for me, and sometimes the lesson is more personal. It's not something that somebody would be able to tell, but was my transformation from being conspiracy-minded into kind of letting that go and being at ease with the conspiracies of the world and focusing more on, how is something helping me better my life or improve my self-growth. It's kind of went from keeping my mind busy and entertained to, how am I helping myself be the optimal me?
Yeah, and I think that's a great description of the Ace of Spades, which is your long range card. So that influence has been there all year. And to see that as a transformation and a major life-changing transformation. I mean, that's not, I've certainly seen the shift in you myself, and I think other people have noticed it, but more importantly, I think you notice it. And just the difference in those mindsets, and we don't have to get into the details of it, but it's a complete change in the direction of your thoughts, in the direction of how you utilize your energy. And so that's a major death, if you will, of a certain time. And hopefully each death creates more compassion for people that are presently experiencing that. See, it's not about levels of going up. We can look at all these levels as side by side, but you're just changing lanes, so to say. And what that normally creates is just communication blockages. But if you handle those communications with compassion and remember how much you were really into it at one time and nobody could change your mind, we need to listen to this on many, many different levels, not just the conspiracy level or the self-help level, but whether that's about sports teams or states or cities or whatever it is, high school teams, whatever it is, that we need to remember that compassion and allowing people to celebrate whatever they're into while I celebrate what I'm into, and we're able to be together and in celebration even if we're not pulling for the same thing, so to say. And I think that's what's going to build a different kind of energy. But to me, that is making love with the friction. It's accepting all of these differences. And on a previous episode, we discussed where Aaron and I, watched a football game together, and our two favorite teams were playing that were opposing. And we had a different experience with that because of the way that we approached it. And I truly didn't carry a preference of I got out of carrying preferences of winning and losing and just being able to enjoy each play and each player as well. And so that changed just the way that I approach enjoying most everything. But that was a good experience that we had with that.
And, going through this transformation, I like to think back of how did I get there? What happened in my life to get there? And I think back to the group thing that I just gave an example of, where that was kind of a big deal for some people, some of the people, so the players that I met within that group. It was like a bunch of us all had the same mindset. We're all of similar age, and we all came together, and our emotions came in because we were happy to find each other. And then once the honeymoon phases is over, you start to realize people's personalities and stuff like that, and it doesn't always mesh that way. But I think back to that, and being in that group was so pivotal in me, in my transition from being conspiracy minded to being where I am today. And I mean, I know how I work, and maybe it doesn't work the same way for some people, but it's almost like I need to dive in deep and get kind of like my tongue bit or stung a little bit with how much energy I put in to realize that, I need to back out and kind of go in a different direction, because this isn't for me, at least not at this point.
And this is just a good point to shine a highlight or a flashlight on your profile of the human design, and his profile numbers happen to be 3-5, and that's a very restless profile and one that wants new experiences. So this is what we have watched together and developed together of, yes, how quickly you can be so into something so extremely at deep depths, but then you can kind of burn out on it really quickly. And the generator way, which is your type, is that more of a slow build. So this is a good example where this shows an inclination, but you now have proof looking back at how that the cost that has. So sometimes see these first inclinations that we go to do that we call our human nature or more organic natures, they can be obstacles. And very similar to children, we can learn to mold them to go, oh, yeah, I'm about to get distracted and I'm going to go down this road, and that's going to take me away from what I've already intended to grow. And so I'm going to choose not to. And I'm going to go, you know what? Thank you for sparking my interest to be creative again. Now I'm going to take that energy and I'm going to pour it into this project that I'm doing. And that can save so much time, so much energy, and then you can still have a similar experience to where at some point, weeks down the road, you look back and go, yeah, see, I'd already be over that thing that I was running out there to chase. And fortunately, I've been involved in other 3.5s for extended long periods of time, and that's what allowed me the wisdom that I had to allow you to pull away for certain times over our partnership here. And now that seems to have come full circle, and you seem to be focusing your energy much more focused and intently now. And I think that's all through your growing and shifting and adjusting. And fortunately, my role was to not push that too fast, because it's important for 3.5s, especially if they're manifesting generators in the human design, to come to it themselves, or manifestors. So we were able to, I feel like, work through all that pretty optimally, and I appreciate the roles that we've all played.
Okay, so now let's get serious with the people out there. How can they get their hands on one of these reports?
So you can visit my website at vibrotune.com, vibrotune.com, and we have a place where you can order the different reports, and look under the report tab and click on that, and it'll give you the different options for these $25 reports. And we can also send you a copy of your human design, and if you don't want a full report, we can do the human design and then a description of your birth card and planetary ruling card for, I think it's $11. So if you don't want to invest the full $25, feel free to just get that. And then the human design chart won't have a lot of information on it. That's for a consultation, typically, to clear a lot of that up. You can get a lot of information from the Destiny card reports, either relationship compatibility reports that shows the top 10 influences that you have on another person. And this really helps to clear up the obstacles in the relationship, the level of attraction, the roles that both parties play. And then our most popular one is your yearly report, which breaks your year down into 52-day cycles and gives you a spread both of your planetary ruling card and your birth card. And again, I'll reiterate that it's up to you when reading those reports, if they are different, for you to decide which you're really closer to, operating out of your planetary ruling card or operating more out of your birth card. And that helps you to determine which one may be coming to more fruition. So in conclusion, this has been a nice two-part segment to cover these Destiny cards. I do look forward for people to expand their knowledge of this and help them understand themselves better and others better as well. Once again, this is focusing on a specific tool. Remember, everyone, tools are just tools, and these work in conjunction with the philosophy, the just philosophy, and from the understanding that we do come together in relationships to learn from each other, and there is always something to be learned if you are interested in finding it. So life is communicating with us many ways all the time, and we just need to slow down enough and pick a language and hear what's being said. So keep growing out there, people. Keep journeying. And we'll see you on the next journey next time.
We appreciate your interest in self-growth, conscious communication, and continuing to ask the wise whys.
And remember, gradual changes over long periods of time equals lasting results.
The information in this podcast has been developed over 20 years by Alexander in his observation of his personal life, private practice, and professional environments. This information is meant for educational purposes only and is not suggested as a replacement for traditional therapies or medications. As a matter of fact, we suggest to not believe any of this information, nor any of the information out there in the world. Remember, knowledge plus experience equals wisdom. Seek the wise. We are looking forward to continuing to provide this information through this platform, and if you are drawn to support us, you can do so by the following. Sharing is caring. Share the podcast with like-minded individuals. Emotional responsibility and energetic wisdom can save the world. If you are drawn to support us monetarily, you can do so by visiting our Patreon page, where you can make a monthly donation in exchange for exclusive Wise perks. You can do this by visiting wise-wise.com/patron, Patreon. Next, you can head over to Alexander's website, where you can book private consultations in person, by phone, or on Skype. Find out more information on his live performances, class schedules, products, including birth chart analysis reports and music, and check out more information on his sound therapy tables. To do so, you can visit vibrotune.com, vibrotune.com. Finally, if you have been searching your entire life for consciously created apparel featuring the Wise logo apparel, Alexander themed clothing, or other alternative perspective designs, you can head over to Verities Apparel, where you can find all that and more. That is veritesapparel.com, VERITEESAPPAREL.com. We want to thank you for being part of this journey.